What's up, everybody? Welcome back to RacingDudes.com. Welcome back to the Kentucky Derby weekly video that we do. We've got a busy show for you here on this one. We're going to recap the 3 Kentucky Derby prep races, well, 2 Kentucky Derby prep races, and one, the Mucho Macho Man, that, I mean, it might as well be. It's not an official one. So we're going to recap all 3 of those. We'll go through new top 5s for myself and John White. We both have changes this week. We'll get John White's comments as well. We'll kind of recap the Racing Dudes Fantasy League draft, where we usually do race previews. There's no Kentucky Derby prep races coming up, so we'll kind of recap the Fantasy League draft. We'll kind of talk about the prospects and where they were drafted and so on and so forth. So a lot going on this show, and let's get to it right now. And let's start off with the Smarty Jones Stakes. That's where we'll start off as we recap these 3 races that happened. And this is a race I thought that was, well, first of all, I know it was dominated by Mark Casse, and I thought it actually had a really nice performance from the number 7 Strategic Risk. He gets the job done here. The Florida bred was looking, he kind of was up and down, but he'd been looking good lately at Gulfstream Park, and he showed up at Oaklawn Park, and I was like, that's very interesting that they're bringing this horse here to Oaklawn when there was the Mucho Macho Man at Gulfstream. But I think we kind of saw why. This horse really likes going 2 turns. It was a really strong 2-turn effort, an 87 Beyer speed figure for the effort for Strategic Risk. I thought pretty darn impressive, really. A horse that I kind of had, maybe, he's going to finish 3rd, 4th, 5th, right about in that range. And he had a no doubt win here in this one. Silent Tactic was 2nd at a big price. I thought he ran well. And like I said, Mark Casse runs 1-2 with these 2 runners here. So pretty darn impressive for him to get a 1-2 finish here with 2 horses that were not favored or even second choices. 2 kind of, well, I guess Strategic Risk may have been the second choice. He was 2nd or 3rd, but long shot there with Silent Tactic. Baytown Dreamer pays $17 to show. Speaking of a long shot, he hung around there for a while. He gets an 80 Beyer there. Some also rans in here. Sleeping on Freedom, a horse that I kind of thought would run a little bit better. Rancho Santa Fe looked like a mess, was last for some reason up the backside, and just kind of never really got into stride. Universe, another horse that just didn't get into stride at all. He gets 2nd to last. So there were a lot of disappointments in this race, but I view it as a solid race. I think this is a top 10 type of horse right now. Tune in here a little bit later, see if it's top 5, but I thought this was a good enough race, no doubt about it. Let's talk about the race I was most impressed with, and that was the Mucho Macho Man, won by Commandment. So Commandment gets the job done in the Mucho Macho Man. He was 1-2, so they bet this horse like he was going to be a stone cold runner, and he was. He kind of sat behind horses. He was pretty patient, and then he pounced and really put him away at the top of the stretch. Who he beat in this race, well, it leaves a lot to be desired. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Commandment does get a 90 Beyer for the effort. I thought that was solid. Look, I at this point in the season, I think that's exactly what you want. I at this point in the year, I don't really want them to come out and run a triple-digit Beyer. We're kind of building right now, and you don't want to peak too early in this situation. So I think it's a good building block. We know he's going to have to get a little bit faster, but he kind of looked like a horse that's got some gears left. I was, like I said, I was most impressed by him. It was a 1-turn mile, stretching out to 2 turns. What will he do? He's by into mischief. I don't imagine a mile 16, mile and 1/8 will be a problem, and that'll be the next steps for this horse. So Commandment ran very well, very well. Roger That Dana was 2nd with a 78 Beyer. Thunderchuck was 3rd with a 75 Beyer. Yeah, it's just not a whole lot in here against Commandment. A horse I was bitterly disappointed in was Epic Summer. I thought he would run well. He did not run well at all, and they're finishing 5th. So who did he beat? Probably not much, but did he do it the way you should beat horses that aren't that good? Absolutely. Yes, he did. So Commandment, a horse I was very impressed with. And yeah, we'll just kind of see as we go down the road with him. But I think he's one that you got to take pretty seriously. And then finally, in the Jerome, I didn't have high expectations for this race. It was just a 4-horse field. Balboa coming off a 3rd place effort in the Rimson was the big favorite in here, and he's defeated by My World. My World wins the race for Brad Cox, another winner for him. 84 Beyer speed figure here for My World. Balboa, like I said, was 2nd. He got an 81, so that's kind of where he's at, right? He might kind of be that horse that's just going to get in front and hold on for a piece of it. Enforced Agenda, another horse I thought would run a lot better. He was third with a 75 buyer. He did not run very well. And then Freedom's Echo was fourth. So, yeah, right away you look at this and go, it seemed like My World needs longer. Balboa was kind of hanging on, and it was like, man, My World's kind of spinning the wheels. But once they got approaching the wire, My World really took off. I kind of like this horse, honestly. I didn't think I'd like this race. I really didn't think I would think much of it. But the way My World won, the way he finished up, there were things about the race that weren't great. It took a while for him to get by Balboa there, and I don't think Balboa is anything, just great. But I don't know. I just the more I watched the replay 3 or 4 times, I thought, you know what, if this horse kind of improved stretching out, he might be pretty good. So we'll see what happens with him. But I didn't watch this race and go, well, that was a total disaster. I don't think it's a Derby winner, but I didn't really, I thought it was fine, so we'll see what happens. All right. As far as next races, My World, the article came out of DRF talking about going to the Withers Stakes next. So, I was talking about stretch out. That would be a stretch out. And I think that's the critical thing. I'm kind of speculating that he can improve going 2 turns. And if he can, he's kind of right there. So, Wither Stakes for My World. I'll scroll back up here to the Smarty Jones. It sounds, there's options. There's the Southwest. There's the Rebel. Mark Cassidy also has Ewing. Strategic Risk. Mark Cassidy said staying right there at Oaklawn. Silent Tactic talked about maybe going back to an allowance before trying stakes again. We'll kind of see on them, but they were kind of, with Ewing in the picture, they were kind of, also said Ewing could go to allowance, and then the Rebel. I don't think they're going to run against each other, although they might. 2 of them ran here, so I don't really know. But Strategic Risk is going to stay at Oaklawn, Southwest, or Rebel. Probably going to be the plan there. Commandment, and I saved him for last. He's contemplating, Brad Cox contemplating the Holy Bull with Commandment off of this Mucho Macho Man win. And that'll kind of parlay it over to one more horse we have to talk about who got the biggest buyer, of the kind of the 3-year-old kind of prospects. And that was an allowance race that happened at Gulfstream Park on Friday. And Nearly, the Todd Pletcher trained Nearly, just blows the doors off this field. We'll talk about the field in a second, but a big victory here. Nearly gets a 96 buyer speed figure. Now they were going 7 furlongs. This was not, a mile or a mile and 16, so just 7 furlongs, but a 96 buyer speed figure. And right after the race, Todd Pletcher commented that the Holy Bull could be next for Nearly. So could we see Commandment versus Nearly in the Holy Bull? And look, for an early prep, that's pretty good. I would love to see that. I think that's a really good early prep matchup. I would be very interested in. So we'll see what happens there with him. The only kind of, again, I think the negative with Commandment and the negative with Nearly is we don't really know who they faced. Almost all the horses scratch out of this race. We had a 4-horse race for this allowance. Confessional was second. I thought he was just okay. I don't think he was awful, but I don't know how he is. Timeless Victory third, and Blame Yourself was fourth. He actually scratched out of the Mucho Macho Man to run here, and he still got fourth in a 4-horse field. Again, we don't know what it was. They both, Nearly and Commandment, beat horses that aren't very good, but beat them how you kind of want to see them win. So that's kind of how I would describe it. But yeah, I get the skepticism if there is some there for these horses. But again, if they meet up in the Holy Bull, I think that would be a good race. All right, let's get to the top 5. I usually do John last. Let's do John first here. So I'm going to do John's top 5 first, and then give you his comments, and then I will do mine. First of all, there are a couple of changes. So why don't I just get to it? John White, Strategic Risk. He does put him at number 5. And I don't hate it. I kind of called him a top 10 caliber horse, I thought, after that race. Really all 3 of these races, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't go in hating them, but I didn't go in thinking, okay, we're going to see something great. They were all okay. So John White has Strategic Risk at number 5. I have no problem with that. Commandment at number 4 for John. And again, that was the most impressive prep of the weekend for me. So I'm with him on there. Litmus Test at up to number 3 this week. A horse that, has been beaten by Ted Noffey a couple of times and came back to win the Los Alamitos Futurity. And I thought he did it pretty darn impressively and kind of backed up that buyer speed figure that he got in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He got a very similar number in the Los Alamitos Futurity. Paladin, number 2, winner of the Rimson Stakes. So we'll kind of see what's going to go on with him. He had a recent workout for Chad Brown. And it sounds like right now, and should be no surprise to anybody, this is what Chad Brown does with the horses, at least at this point, he believes this is top Kentucky Derby contender, Risen Star into the Bluegrass, third race off the layoff there, the Kentucky Derby. Makes a ton of sense. And I'm excited to see how that works out. And then number 1, Ted Noffey, of course, for John. And obviously still just the choice, even with some horses looking impressive over the weekend. I mean, Ted Noffey still seems to be number 1 at this moment. All right, let's go through John's comments here. Looks like he's got a good bit of a commentary here, and we always love that. So, all right. This is John White's words now. Now that the calendar has flipped to 2026, there's been quite a shakeup in my Kentucky Derby top 5 this week. Undefeated Breeders' Cup winner Ted Noffey continues to hold the top spot, while Rimson winner Paladin remains a solid number 2. It turned out that Ted Noffey and Paladin were the first 2 picks in the dude's fantasy draft. I'll talk about that here in a second to close out the show. Back to John. Both Renegade and Napoleon Solo are off my top 5 this week. Renegade is talented, no question about it. But at this point, he is still a maiden. As for the Champagne winner, Napoleon Solo, he's a long ways off from a race. I'll stop John's comments. Let me comment on that. I took Napoleon Solo off this week as well, and just we haven't seen a work. And it's still early enough. I'm not overly concerned. It's probably March, I think, at this point, or at least late February. So I get that. I did the same thing. Okay, back to John's comments. This week, I'm moving Litmus Test up a notch to number 3. Debuting at number 4 is Commandment. I was very impressed with the gusto with which he came home when winning the Mucho Macho Man in emphatic fashion. Also debuting this week is Strategic Risk, who I have at number 5. He exhibited a good late energy in his win in the Smarty Jones going away. It looks like both Commandment and Strategic Risk are going to make a lot of noise on the road to this year's Kentucky Derby. I also thought My World looked good when winning the Jerome for his third straight win. My World is lurking just below my top 5. So that's interesting as well. Back to John. My World and Commandment are both trained by Brad Cox. Of course, a lot is going to happen between now and the first Saturday in May. But the way I see it, as the first Saturday in January, there's no question that Ted Noffey is the clear-cut number 1 among all Kentucky Derby hopefuls. All right. So that's John White's commentary this week. I'll go ahead and do my top 5 now and kind of talk about it a little bit. So I've got Commandment at number 5, and I totally agree with what John said. I really liked, he showed that maturity that you really like to see. I've never trained a horse, but I would have to think the hardest thing is getting the horse to kind of understand when it's time to run and when it's time to just kind of cruise and be patient. He seems to have that down. At least he did in the Mucho Macho Man. He really shut it off, I thought, up the backside and just got into a nice cruising speed, took his time, wasn't really headstrong whatsoever, very relaxed. And then when they asked that horse to go, he took off on them. And again, he beat a group that wasn't very good, but he buried them. So I like that about him. Number 4, Litmus Test for me. And again, I think right now he's kind of the placeholder. He's kind of hey, this is a horse that Ted Noffey was beating in a couple of races. Then after he got away from Ted Noffey, he won. That's pretty good. So I kept him at number 4. I kept Renegade at number 3. I get what John's saying. At the end of the day, this horse is just a maiden. And if you're looking, okay, these horses have won Kentucky Derby prep races, why do I have this maiden ahead of them? I get it. I don't have any argument towards that. I just kind of look at it as like, look, I really like Paladin a lot, and Renegade's been right there with him in 2 starts. So I'm going to keep him at number 3. I think he's got a lot of potential. I really do. So I'm going to keep him at number 3. You can always move him down. And like John said, a lot's going to happen between the first Saturday in January versus the first Saturday in May. I talked about Paladin. I've got him number 2. I just really like him. I think he's got a world of potential. I think he's going to love going a mile and a quarter. I mean, he's already won a mile and 1/8. It seems like that's his thing. So really excited to see what he does next. And then, I mean, Ted Noffey's still number 1 at this point. And, I definitely am looking for horses to replace him with, because I think that's kind of where your head goes as a horse player. It's like, okay, Ted Noffey, he's a favorite. I mean, I can play a favorite for sure, but let's see if we can find somebody to beat him. Let's see if there's something up and coming thing. And while I think last week was a pleasant surprise, I still don't think they showed they're as good as Ted Noffey at this point. So right now he'll be number one again this week. All right. I said we were going to do one more thing. Let's kind of, and I'm not going to read every horse to you here, right? But let's kind of recap kind of some, and I'll pause on some moments I thought were kind of interesting. The Racing News Fantasy League draft was last weekend. I guess that was last Monday now. So it was a week ago today as I'm recording this on a Monday. And what this is, we had 12 teams this year. Each team drafts 5 horses. So you get 60 horses drafted. We don't do this publicly to like, hey, root for us to win. We do this because as kind of a fun way to get 60 horses out there every week too. I write an article every week that updates, what's going on with these horses, what they're doing. So it's just kind of a fun way to cover all the Kentucky Derby kind of, contenders. So there were 60 horses. Ted Noffey went number 1, no surprise. Paladin number 2. And honestly, I thought this thing was going to get weird after 1 and 2. I drafted number 2. I never considered anybody but Paladin. I just think he's established at this point. I don't think anybody like Vinny drafted number 1. I don't really think he thought about anybody but Ted Noffey. After this, it could go anywhere. And I have no criticisms really when I say about this, because like I said, 3 through 60, I mean, they're really interchangeable, especially a week ago. You remember we drafted these before they ran the prep races, right? So last weekend. So, I was surprised Incredible went number 3, but I don't think that's crazy. I was surprised Ewing went as high as number 4, but again, he showed talent. I don't think it's crazy. Cannoneer at number 5, I thought was kind of early, but again, Cannoneer, a maiden winner who looks like he's going to be pretty good. Another maiden winner, Iron Honor at number 7. Chad Brown horse that's got a lot of hype after that win at Aqueduct. Further Ado, I thought was about right at number 8. Another horse that freaked in a maiden and then won a stakes. So kind of forgotten, because that feels like that was forever ago. It really wasn't, but it feels like it was. So he went number 8, Litmus Test 9, Blackout Time, the Kenny McPeak runner that had to scratch out, but he's Blackout Time's kind of like Litmus Test in a way, as he's ran behind Ted Noffey, and we saw what Litmus Test did. So I don't think that's too bad. Rancho Santa Fe there at number 11, off the board in the Smarty Jones. So that's worrisome for sure. Some other ones I talked about, Napoleon Solo earlier. He went 13. That's probably about right, just because you just don't know what's going on with him. Class President, a maiden special weight winner for Todd Pletcher recently. That's an interesting horse there at 14. Boyd, a Bob Baffert runner who's won 1-turn races. He's there at 16. I like him. Universe, another one. Now that you look back, you go, holy cow, Universe went at number 17. He's off the board in the Smarty Jones, but again, hindsight 2020 there. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile 3rd place finisher Brandt goes 19. We're going to just go down here now. My World was drafted number 25. He wins the Jerome. So is that one. The 2nd place horse, Balboa, drafted at 28 in the Jerome. Commandment was drafted number 29. Of course, he's on John White and I's top 5. I'm having 5. John has him 4. He gets drafted 29. So obviously that was a very, very good draft pick there, at least to the early going. I want to make a note. Mr. AP was drafted in this. He's off the Kentucky Derby trail. There's a chance maybe he could, if everything goes great, maybe he can make like a Belmont or something. But yeah, that's, probably not the best draft pick. I think they regretted that one. Confessional at 35. And of course he gets 2nd to Nearly. So they got to be upset there. Epic Summer off the board in the Mucho Macho Man. He went at 37. Oscar's Hope, I think, finished last in Smarty Jones. He goes 39. And Forced Agenda 3rd in the Jerome. He goes 40. So you can see it's tough. It's very tough. Life comes at you fast, so to speak. Mob was drafted 48. He had to scratch. Boca Beach Club. He had to scratch out of an allowance, I should say. Boca Beach Club scratch out of the Smarty Jones. I took him at 50. So we'll see what happens with him. There you see Strategic Risk drafted 53rd. and he wins the Smarty Jones. So that is a great draft pick there as well. I'm interested in a couple here to end. Silent Tactic, by the way, 59th. He was second in the Smarty Jones. Mesquite. I picked this horse to win the Gun Runner back in December. And that's weird to say back in December now, but we are into January. Scratched. Haven't heard a lot about him. I've been kind of looking. Haven't heard a lot about him. I like that horse. 56. We'll see what happens there. 57 is interesting. An unnamed Todd Pletcher colt who is a full brother to Nest. Of course, Nest was a great filly for Todd Pletcher. So unnamed, unraced, obviously, and working out for Todd Pletcher down in Florida. So he was drafted 57. We'll see what happens there. And then you got to give Kelly Von Hemel a shout out. Of course, Kelby Von Hemel, the son of Kelly, drafted 54-yarder, a maiden special weight debut winner at Oaklawn Park. And looking at an allowance race next for him. So shout out to 54-yarder. Hopefully he can get that team some points as well. All right. Wow. We had a long one there. That was a long show today, but that's all right. We had a lot to talk about, lots to go over. All right. We'll be back next week. Not much to recap next week. We'll look ahead though to the comp next week at Fairgrounds. Coming up on January 17th. So we'll preview that. We'll have new top fives, new commentary from John. You never know. The San Vicente is coming up in the Pasco Stakes. We could see something there that jumps on. The San Vicente's been a decent prep at times over the years. So we could see something there, maybe a Bob Baffert runner that we get excited about or something like that. So we'll kind of recap all of that. We'll get new top fives, and then we'll look ahead to the comp. All right, guys. Thanks, everybody, for watching the first Kentucky Derby video of 2026. We're finally into 2026. All eyes on the first Saturday in May now. All right, guys. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next week.